I got my first femoral stress fracture in December of 2011. Femoral stress fracture, what does that mean? A stress fracture is a crack in a bone caused by stress or force, sometimes overuse. And femoral is anything having to do with the femur. The femur is the thigh bone. It extends from the pelvis to the knee, and it is the longest, largest, and strongest bone in the human body. So, because of this, femoral stress fractures are pretty rare. They account for only about 5% of all stress fractures and present most commonly in endurance athletes like runners. I was on crutches for about 6 weeks, which now that doesn't seem like a very long time, but that first go around, it was pretty rough. Yeah, being on crutches anywhere sucks, but being on crutches in New York City really sucks. Like, it's either very expensive, taking cabs everywhere, or it's very time consuming and physically strenuous. Or, I mean, it's both, really. I had a pretty negative attitude about my injury. I got depressed, and I gained like 4 or 5 pounds or something, and that didn't help anything. I mean, I was angry. Like, I just discovered this thing, this positive, healthy thing that helped me cope with the stress of living in New York City and being an actress. And suddenly I couldn't run anymore in New York City. Instead, I was on crutches in New York City. And I felt like I didn't deserve it. I hadn't done anything wrong. My form was great. I had a running coach at New York Sports Medicine. Things were... I didn't know what happened. They just said this was one of those freak things and it happens sometimes. And yes, it's rare, but it does happen. So sorry it happened to you. So I felt pretty sorry for myself. Yeah, it was hard. I healed though. Everything was great. I became a personal trainer at Equinox Printing House in the West Village of New York, which was a very cool job. I loved it. Some celebrities worked out at that gym. John Hamm, Claire Danes. That was really cool. I booked my first feature film called How to Be a Man, which you can see on Netflix. So I was thriving. I mean, I was doing great. I came off this injury and it was like night and day. I was happy and fit and exercising and achieving goals that I'd set for myself. So, yeah, I was happy. Then my hips started hurting. Like, a lot. It was early winter in 2012. I'd wrapped How to Be a Man, the film, and I decided to come home to Kentucky for an extended Christmas vacation. By Christmas Eve, I could not walk. So it was my right leg, which was the same leg the initial injury presented in, but the stress fracture in 2011 was in the shaft of my femur. That's the middle of the bone. So like right under the meat of the quad is where that is. The pain now was presenting in my hip. So this was not a pain I recognized at all. It never crossed my mind that it could be another stress fracture. I had a lot of friends who were very accomplished amateur endurance athletes who had experienced labral tears. The labrum is a ring of cartilage that lines the outside rim of the socket of the hip joint. So if this is the pelvis and this is the femur, this is the ball right here of the femur and there's the thigh bone, the labrum kind of sits right in here so that your pelvis and your femur aren't grinding against each other. My dad took me to the emergency room on Christmas Eve. The emergency room at Pikeville Medical Center performed an x-ray, and this came back clean, and it didn't surprise me. I didn't think I needed an x-ray because I was sure I had a tear, and neither tears or stress fractures present in x-rays. I wanted an MRI, but to get an MRI, you have to have an order from a doctor. So after Christmas, I went to see my PCP, that's my primary care physician in Kentucky. He wouldn't order an MRI for me. My doctor, my primary care physician, said, "You just need to rest. You have brought all this on yourself. You're just tired. You're overworked. You just need to stop working out so much." It was around this time I started getting all these comments that I was an exercise freak or that I was obsessed with exercise. I knew what I was doing. I had a running coach. I had great form. I wasn't being unsafe. I was using proper nutrition. I mean, my God, I'm a type 1 diabetic. If I wasn't, I would have ended up in the hospital, right? I was dumbfounded. It didn't make sense. My injuries did not make sense. So I laid on my back for the next 2 weeks in Kentucky. I ceased all exercising. I ceased doing everything that I didn't have to do, besides get up to go pee sometimes. Yeah, I just laid there. It did start feeling better. I mean, tolerable, at least. I could walk. So I went back to New York, and that's when I started to doubt myself. That's when I started thinking, well, what if everyone is right? What if I'm just not cut out for this? What if I am doing this to myself? But it never really healed. I mean, the pain subsided, but it was never less than tolerable. It wasn't really okay. I hadn't exercised in nearly 2 months at this point. I occasionally did a little bit of yoga, but no cardiovascular activity, no weightlifting, nothing like that. I couldn't sleep at night. I couldn't sleep on my right side because of the pain in my hip. So finally, I made an appointment with Dr. Michael Neely, who is the sports medicine doctor at New York Sports Medicine, who had diagnosed the initial stress fracture in the shaft of the femur in 2011. The first thing he did after scolding me for waiting so long to make an appointment was order an MRI. It did not come back clean.